Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of O-Level Biology. Today, I'm your host, Maxine, and we have Nilanto here to explain to you the third chapter, Movements in and Out of Cells. Over to you, Nilanto.
Hello everyone, today we shall be covering the third chapter of the O-level syllabus, which is movement in and out of cells. This is a fairly easy chapter, so this session is going to be pretty short. The subtopics we shall be covering today are diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. So let's get started. First, let's check the first two topics that is stated in the syllabus. Here is the syllabus. We have to check out the role of water in organisms alongside energy for diffusion and for all the other stuff. So what is diffusion? It is the net movement of particles from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration down a concentration gradient. It is when particles of a certain substance moves from a place from higher concentration to a lower concentration. For example, when you release some kind of a perfume from a corner of a room and then go to another side, you will eventually get the scent of the perfume eventually. How is it possible? That is because the perfume actually diffused from one area to the another. Now, diffusion occurs down the concentration gradient. Concentration gradient is the difference in concentration between two regions as the particles move, and the effect of diffusion is due to concentration gradient and the temperature of the surroundings, such as if the concentration gradient is really high, then the particles are more likely to diffuse from one region to another. Another factor will be temperature. As the temperature increases the movement of particles as they gain kinetic energy, so they will move faster from one corner to the other. Now, diffusion is affected by some other factors also, such as molecular size. The smaller the molecule, the faster the diffusion. And then the surface area, faster diffusion occurs when surface area increases. For example, in root hair cells, the surface area is really large. Therefore, diffusion of water and other mineral ions occurs at a faster rate through the membrane of the roots. Then membrane permeability, higher the permeability, higher the diffusion, and the membrane thickness. If the membrane is really thin, then diffusion will occur at a faster rate, such as in red blood cells, where the faster absorption of oxygen is really needed via diffusion. Now, this is an example I have shown here as to how a permeable membrane impacts diffusion. In this experiment, due to diffusion, the dissolved particles of copper sulfate will move across the permeable membrane to the left side of the beaker, where its concentration is low. Similarly, potassium iodide particles will also diffuse across the membrane to the right side of the beaker, where it is of lower concentration. Eventually, there will be equal concentration on both sides of the beaker, all because of diffusion. Now, in order to increase the rate, we can use hot water or apply some sort of heat in any way possible, or use a membrane that is more permeable to both substances. Now we shall cover osmosis. Osmosis is exactly like diffusion, but rather it is the net movement of water molecules only. And unlike diffusion, osmosis requires a semi-permeable membrane. Why I said unlike diffusion? Because diffusion can occur even without a membrane. It can occur in gases and liquids also. So the permeability of the membrane means it only allows certain substances to pass through. For osmosis, we're referring to water molecules. Water potential refers to the tendency of water to move from one region to another due to difference in concentration. Now, a dilute solution has more water molecules, so it has higher water potential, while a concentrated solution of any substance has lower water potential as it has less water molecules. For example, in a salt solution, if you mix like probably 1 tablespoon of salt in larger amount of water, then it will be more dilute. So it will have a higher water potential. But if you mix lots of tablespoons of salt, then eventually the solution will become concentrated and it will have lower water potential. Now, the water potential of a solution on can have an impact on certain types of cells, especially plant cells and animal cells, due to the movement of water in and out. In plant cells, if you place a plant cell in a solution with higher water potential, as in a dilute salt solution, then water will enter the cell through the cell wall, as the cell sap has a lower water potential. The cell will start to swell up as it begins to gain more and more water, but it will not burst, since the rigid cell wall protects it from bursting, as it overcomes the turgid pressure of the water. So the cell becomes turgid as the cell wall withstands the turgid pressure. Now, this story is different for animal cells because by osmosis, again, water will also enter the cell through the cell membrane, as the cytoplasm has lower water potential. But unlike plant cells, animal cells will eventually burst, as they do not have a cell wall and the cell membrane cannot withstand the turgid pressure. Now let's think of the opposite. What if a cell is kept in a solution with lower water potential, such as a concentrated salt solution? But now the opposite will occur, but it will occur differently for both cells. For plant cell, water will leave the cell through the cell wall, as the cell sap has higher water potential. As the cell loses water, the vacuole eventually decreases in size, the cytoplasm shrinks, and the cell membrane is pulled away from the cell wall. In practicals, if you see a plant cell under a microscope which has been placed in a concentrated salt solution, you will eventually see that inside the cell there is this bubble-like things inside. Those indicate that the cell membrane has been pulled away from the cell wall. So the cell eventually becomes flaccid and is said to be plasmolysed. Flaccid as in it is now pretty much weak and not turgid anymore. Now, what about animal cells? The first same thing will occur. Water will leave the cell through the cell membrane, but animal cells, unlike plant cells, animal cells will eventually face crenation, where the overall shape of the cell is altered. As it becomes more dehydrated, it will eventually die off. So now this kind of turgid pressure is also important for plants, as it plays an important role in maintaining the shape of plant tissues. Due to the turgid pressure, most of the leaves and stem remains firm and erect. If there is a higher rate of evaporation of water from the plants, they will eventually lose turgidity and become flaccid, losing structural support. Now, what if we give too much fertilizer around the roots of the plants? The same thing will occur as cells placed in solution with lower water potential, as the soil will eventually become more concentrated, so water will move out of the roots by osmosis. So plasmolysis will occur when the cells of the plant becomes flaccid, and it will eventually die if it occurs for too long, unless if we give sufficient water at the right time. Now, these are some of the roles of water in living organisms. There will be at least 4 to 5 worth questions regarding the impact of water in living organisms in both animal and plant cells. Dissolved substances such as mineral ions, nutrients can be transported easily through vessels such as xylem and phloem in plants and through blood vessels in animals. Digested food molecules in the alimentary canal can be moved to cells throughout the body. Toxic substances such as urea, creatine, and excess salts are dissolved in water and are removed from the body as urine or sweat, act as a solvent for various chemical reactions to occur, and it is an important part of cell cytoplasm for metabolic reactions to occur. Now let's cover the last subtopic, which is active transport. Now, unlike diffusion or osmosis, active transport requires energy from respiration, as it requires the channel proteins on the cell membrane in order to move certain substances from a region of lower concentration to a region of high concentration through the semipermeable membrane. For example, in root hair cells, there are a large number of mitochondria, as we have covered in the first cell chapter. Now, the reason behind the large number of mitochondria is because large amounts of energy needs to be produced, so that via channel protein and carrier proteins, some substances such as charged ions can be moved from an area of lower concentration to an area of higher concentration through the cell membrane. And since root hair cells, as we have once talked about, have a large extension which increases the surface area, it can uptake mineral ions at a faster rate. Now let's check out some of the questions regarding this chapter. Now there is not much a hard question for this chapter since this is pretty easy, but I've still given one that may cause some bit of confusion. Explain the importance of active transport in the human alimentary canal. The answer that I've given: absorption of nutrients such as carbohydrates, amino acids takes place through villi via active transport against a concentration gradient. Active transport allows faster uptake of nutrients than diffusion, therefore less nutrients are lost through egestion. Now, why did I give the last line? Because if normal diffusion occurred, then most of the nutrients that we achieve from the foods that we have ingested would eventually be lost, as most will not be uptaken by the villi by diffusion. Therefore, by active transport, most of the nutrients such as glucose, amino acids, and vitamins are eventually uptaken through blood. So in order to prevent the loss of most nutrients via egestion or any other sort of excretion means. Now, this is the end of the session. I hope you all have learned something from this chapter. In the next session, we are going to cover biological molecules.